What if the London you walk through every single day is sitting directly on top of another London? A complete lost city with its own streets, its own buildings, its own advanced civilization buried beneath your feet right now. They never taught you this in school. They never put it in the history books, but the proof is still there, in old photographs, in the architecture you pass every day, and in the ground beneath the busiest streets in Britain. London wasn't just built, London was rebuilt on top of the ruins of something far older and far more advanced. And once you see what they buried, you'll never look at the city the same way again. In this video, we're exposing one of the biggest hidden histories of the Western world, the original London that still lies buried beneath the one we know today. We're talking about the mud flood reset of the 1850s to 1913, the deliberate burial of Tartarian London, and the architectural anomalies, photographic evidence, and historical records that prove an entire advanced civilization was wiped from the map and covered in millions of tons of mud and debris. We'll walk through the sunken windows you can still see in the City of London today, the giant doors that now open into basements, the glass sidewalks that once lit up underground halls, and the cathedrals built as healing machines. This isn't theory, this is visible. This is documented. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why official history stays completely silent, because the real Western past was never primitive. It was magnificent, and they buried it on purpose. Let's start with the photographs that change everything. Go back to 1858. London is supposedly in the middle of the Victorian boom, yet look at the old images taken during street widening projects near Fleet Street and the Strand. You see entire rows of buildings with their ground floors already buried up to the windows. Workers are digging down, not building up. The first floors of these structures are clearly below the new street level. Windowsills that should be at eye height are now 4 feet underground. You can still see this same thing today if you walk behind the Royal Courts of Justice or along parts of the embankment. Those basement windows, they were never basements. They were street-level entrances to a city that got buried overnight. Have you ever noticed these sunken windows when you're walking through central London? Next time you're there, look down. Really look. The city is literally sinking, or rather, the streets were raised on top of something older. Now let's talk about what actually caused it. In the 1850s, something catastrophic hit London and much of Europe and America at the exact same time. Official history calls it urban improvement or the Great Stink, but the photographs tell a different story. Entire districts suddenly disappear under layers of fine, uniform mud and debris. No volcanic eruption, no tsunami record, just millions of tons of liquefied earth appearing almost instantly. Researchers who study the mud flood theory estimate over 432 million tons of this material was moved and dumped across the Western world in a single generation. Look at construction photos from the 1860s near Blackfriars. You see builders shoring up walls that are already half submerged. The mud didn't flow in from a river. It looks like it was dropped from above or forced upward in a liquefaction event. And right after the mud settled, the elite began the biggest rebuilding program in history, with money that seemed to appear from nowhere. The architecture itself is screaming the truth at us. Walk past any pre-1850 building in the City of London and you'll see doorways that are 12, 14, even 16 feet tall. These weren't built for normal-sized people. The ceilings inside are equally massive, as if the original inhabitants were giants or simply lived in a much grander scale. Many of these giant entrances are now bricked up or lead straight into modern basements. The official explanation? Flood protection. But that doesn't explain why the same pattern exists in Paris, in New York, and in Berlin. Same giant doors, same buried first floors, same story. And then are the glass sidewalks. Yes, London still has them. Those purple-tinted glass bricks set into the pavement outside old banks and warehouses. They were never decorative. They were skylights for the floor below that is now considered underground. The original London had entire networks of illuminated subterranean halls powered by natural light. We just paved over them and called them cellars. The cathedrals were never just churches. St. Paul's Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, these structures were built long before the official timeline claims. Their domes and towers are tuned like massive resonance machines. The church bells across London were historically rung at 432 Hz, the exact frequency said to promote healing and calm the nervous system. Old photographs from the 1840s show these buildings standing completely clean and untouched while surrounding streets are being excavated from mud. It's as if the cathedrals were already ancient when the mud flood hit, and they survived because they were built to withstand it. Inside, the acoustics are perfect. Sound resonates in ways modern science still can't fully explain. Was this free energy technology? Was London once powered by a wireless atmospheric grid, with these cathedrals acting as both power stations and healing temples? The blueprints certainly suggest it. And then, after 1850, the technology was deliberately switched off or hidden. The maps don't lie either. Compare John Roke's 1746 map of London with the Ordnance Survey maps from the 1890s. Entire districts that were once wide boulevards and grand plazas have simply vanished. In their place, narrow Victorian streets built on raised ground. Old illustrations from the 1830s show London with buildings sitting much lower relative to the Thames. After the 1850s, the river embankments were raised dramatically. Why? Because the old ground level was now under mud. The same thing happened in New York with their raised sidewalks in the 1860s, and in Paris with the sudden renovation under Haussmann. This was not gradual city planning. This was a coordinated reset across the entire Western world, and London was ground zero for the British side of the operation. Then came the Great Exhibition of 1851, the Crystal Palace. Official story says it was a celebration of industry, but look closer. The photographs show impossible architecture being displayed, giant glass structures, advanced machinery with no visible power source, and artifacts that look straight out of a Tartarian city. After the exhibition closed, they didn't just dismantle the palace, they demolished it and buried the site. Same pattern repeated at every World's Fair from Chicago 1893 to Paris 1900. These weren't exhibitions, they were clearance sales, public displays of Tartarian technology right before the elite tore it all down and rewrote history. What do you think really happened in the 1850s? Was it a natural disaster or a deliberate reset? Now the human cost. Right after the mud flood and the demolition phase came the orphan trains. In Britain, they called them the Home Children Program. Tens of thousands of children shipped off to colonies with no records of their parents. Official history says they were street urchins, but the timing is too perfect. Burned-out districts, mud-buried towns, entire families missing, and suddenly the elite have a clean slate and an endless supply of cheap labor. The same pattern in America with the orphan trains after the Great Chicago Fire, which many researchers now believe was no accident. By 1913, the reset was complete. New banking laws, new education systems, new histories written. The old world was gone. The new world, the one we live in, was built on top of the bones of something magnificent. So what still lies buried today? Beneath the streets of London there are sealed tunnels, forgotten halls, and entire city blocks that have never been properly excavated. Every time they dig for the Elizabeth line or crossrail, workers find anomalies they're told to ignore. Roman layers on top of older, more advanced foundations that don't match any known civilization. The last witnesses, elderly Londoners born in the 1880s and 1890s, spoke in interviews about the old city their grandparents remembered. They described streets that were wider, buildings that hummed with energy, and trees so massive the sky looked different. Then the oxygen levels dropped, the giant trees were cut down, and the world we know began. The evidence is still there, if you know where to look. London was built on top of another London. The original streets are still buried below. The cathedrals were healing machines. The mud flood was real, and the 1850 to 1913 reset erased the greatest civilization the West had ever known, replacing it with a simpler, controlled version of history. You just saw the photographs. You just saw the architecture. You just saw the maps. This isn't conspiracy. This is what they buried, and it's still right under our feet. If this video opened your eyes, hit like right now, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next piece of hidden history. Comment below, what buried history have you seen in your city? Have you spotted the sunken windows in London, the raised streets in New York, or the giant doors in Paris? Drop your photos, your stories, and your thoughts. The truth is still down there, waiting to be uncovered. I'll see you in the next one.